Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone.
Welcome to the Plus Sides Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kim Carlos. And if you don't know me, hi. So glad to meet you. How are you? This is Kat and JT, and we all host this together. And we have people from our community come on and share their stories about overcoming, if you will, the disease of obesity and related diseases and disorders. And we bring on doctors so that you can learn about all of these things. And it could be mental, it could be physical, it could be HR professionals, whatever it is. Our goal is to help empower you so that you can advocate for your health and no longer feel alone and know that it's not your fault because facts, science, and data. So we are glad to have you. And that's who I am. I've been taking these medicines for 14 months now, depending on when you're watching.
Wow.
And I have lost 86 pounds. My health has vastly improved. I also used to have crippling anxiety, and it is gone. It is gone. And that's been crazy. And I have gained so much from this community, way more than the 86 lost. And it's changed my life. It means so much to me, and I get upset just thinking about it, but I do. These ladies here with me, as well as like all these people that we see, it's just my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing. So we're so glad to have you with us. So Kat, who are you? What you doing? Who are you? What's up?
I am Kat Carter, and our resident ATLian, of course.
Oh, the
ATLian. I want to say, because I just did 100 miles this weekend on my spin community, is that fit has no size. I said on one of my TikToks, I would have trained and done this at 310 pounds or currently at 244, where I am right now.
Wow.
I was always active, always liked fitness. I trained for a half marathon in 2005, not in a very healthy way, but I was at 250. Yeah. So fit has no size. It's always been in my life. So I would say I've always had fitness in my life, but now with Mounjaro. I said Mounjaro for the last 14 months. My slow loss of, I don't even know. I can't math right now. 68 pounds.
That's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I hate it's now I fit societal's view of an active person.
Yeah.
That's kind of depressing, but
sorry. It is depressing.
It has no freaking size though.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like Dr. Trimmer would say, she would say like health has no size. And then she would go, but it does have an expiration date, but that's not the same thing.
I was getting there. I was creeping up. The A1C was getting there. So yeah.
But that's so true. Like you can be as fit as you want to be. Like you can be all of those things. And if you get your body to a place where it can receive that mentally and physically, then you can do anything you want. You know?
Yeah.
You can. I've been 100 miles, baby.
That is absolutely crazy. 100 miles. I'm just like, you rode 100 miles. I'm still trying to process
I was
that.
prepared for this one.
Speaking of, JT, who are you? What chat? Where you from?
Oh,
What you doing?
I'm just this girl on TikTok. That's all.
Girl.
Girl, please.
Look, yeah, nah. So, I'm look. All I am is just this little chocolate drop from Washington D.C. And
DC chocolate drop. Okay.
look,
You should use
look,
that. You should
look,
use that.
I
that
am
work?
just this chocolate drop from Chocolate City, who just happens to have type 2 diabetes, who just happens to have a late in life obesity, and who just happens to have an autoimmune disease. So I just got medically all the things, but I tell you, life has been so good. And just looking at my life from this time last year to now, I'm still amazed. I'm literally amazed. Sometimes tears start to well up in my eyes, but I'm like, big girls don't cry, and there's no crying in baseball, so
No.
I don't do it. But I think about it, and I'm forever grateful for the opportunity to get healthy, to absolutely get healthy, and and to meet some of the best people that I have met in my life.
Yeah.
True.
I feel the same. It's been such a blessing in so many ways. And like I just hope we can help
Yeah.
more people. Like I just want to help more people. And like legitimately every time I partner with someone for the podcast to be on to be a sponsor, I always end it with let's help people. You know?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and because that's what we're trying to do. We really are. And it does
Exactly.
feel like David and Goliath a lot, but I do think it's all kind of working out. But one of our very special guests today, we have Lee from our community, is going to tell his community story.
Yay.
And then we also have Dr. Rachel, who was actually on the Oprah special. And we all did a special on that, was on the Oprah special with Dr. Rachel. And they met and discussed food noise. And he was kind enough to introduce us. And she's going to be on our show today. And we're going to talk a lot about the
Amazing.
mental connection with all of this. And
This community
we
rocks.
hope that you'll hang with us while we go through it.
Mhm.
And it may be a little bumpy because as you can see, I do not have my mic. So everything went to kaput. So we've got like old school camp.
Yeah, you do.
There you
Yeah.
go.
You got your MJ mic. See, I don't have that. All I
This
got my
community rocks. We all look out for each other.
Hmm.
We're the best.
I got an MJ mic.
There you
Oh,
go.
There we go. Ladies
All
and
you
gentlemen.
got to do is just tape the
beloved.
microphone to it.
There it is. This is my MJ mic today. So I do not have a microphone. Anyway, so let's get started, huh?
Sounds good.
So without further ado, we want to bring in our community guest. Haley.
Hey, how's
How
it
you
going?
doing?
Thanks
We're
for
so
coming
glad to
on,
have
Lee.
you. We're so glad.
Yeah, I had to get dressed up for the big event.
Yeah,
look
you
at
did.
you.
Yeah.
How was court? I mean,
Good,
I'm sure you can't
so-
because it was court, but
Yeah, I was actually supposed to be in trial this morning, and
Yeah.
we got started a little bit, and then the judge was sick or something, and they just said they weren't coming, and we're going to start with a new judge tomorrow. So that worked out because I had this already planned during the lunch break for court, but now, so I'm
Yay,
excited.
court.
Yeah,
Hello, plus sides.
exactly. I was like, well, I'm just going to go do a podcast then with all my friends. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Your friends.
Love
That's
it.
right. And if you don't know, we are all friends because we met on TikTok, which sounds bizarre.
Yeah.
It still to me sounds
Beyond.
bizarre, but we are all leveraging a GLP-1 medication to treat our obesity or related diseases and disorders. It's changed our lives. And we want to take the opportunity for people in our community to take the space and be able to tell their stories unfiltered and uncut. Because our only agenda, the only thing we are trying to accomplish is for people to go talk to their doctors, for they to realize they're not alone. It's not their fault. We just want them to go see their doctor because there's treatment now. 3 solid FDA-approved treatments now. And we want everybody to know about it.
Yep.
Solid.
Solid.
Oh, yeah. Solid.
Lee, please take the space to tell us your story unfiltered.
Oh, I'm going to keep it brief because I've been on the show before, but I do want to say, I started a GLP-1 back in April, and my initial goal was to fit onto the Mario Kart ride in Universal Studios Japan, and I did. And then because whenever, so that's why my handle is LeeFitsIn, because I was going to fit into the ride. And then because there aren't that many guys on here sharing their journeys. My story got picked up by Good Morning America and Oprah, and I got flown out by Oprah. It was on her show, so I recommend everybody go see that if they haven't yet. And then, so then it's been kind of like an emotional down. Like, where do you go after you're on the Mario Kart ride and Oprah? At that point, it's like, I'm done again.
You gotta find your theme parks. That's what it is.
Yeah, I gotta find more theme parks. But now, so my story is a little different in that weight loss hasn't been like a big prominent feature for me. All my blood work is better, blood pressure, all the things, liver function is better. Everything has gone better, and I have lost some weight and inches and stuff, but it hasn't been like, I've been on it since April, and I probably lost 25 pounds, and it's been kind of stable the last couple months since I got back from Japan. But it's fine, because one of the big things for me is the food noise, and just having that be gone is a huge benefit unto itself. Plus all my numbers are improving. And so, I mean, I'm a big advocate for this stuff. I do think I might want to try tirzepatide now, because I'm not type 2, so I can't get Mounjaro, but Zepbound, I think it's in my future. So anyway, LeeFitsIn. Go check out my page. I am just sharing my journey and cooking stuff with cottage cheese, and occasionally dancing and goofing around. So anyway,
stuff with cottage cheese.
That sounds like
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I love it. I love cottage cheese.
And pickle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, cottage cheese and pickles.
Yeah, I love, and I do some pickle comparisons, and what's better. There's some pickle wars. Oh, and I am an attorney, so this is the other thing. For coverage issues, there are litigation, and there litigation involving discrimination, and there are angles we're trying on the litigation front to push for coverage for these things, and that's something that I'm right on top of, because 1, I'm an attorney. 2, I'm on GLP-1s. 3, they're in Washington State, 2 of the most prominent lawsuits that are happening right now. So all of that is right in my wheelhouse. So if you are curious about where this litigation goes, give me a follow. So
and if you are watching this, you likely seen my hell yeah it is that went viral.
Yes, so
and it
great.
Was about that, right? Like I just pitched it because I was like, that's exactly what it is. And I've been trying to tell people, like, let's go for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like excluding something that treats for a recognized disease, that treats your medication, is FDA approved with 20 years of data, is a completely discrimination, asinine, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It can't be accepted. But we have to get loud, and no one is going to do it if we don't do it. And that's what we're all trying to do here together, aren't we?
Yep.
Yes. Now, Lee, you didn't get a chance to really tell much of your story. I know.
Okay, you know what though, Kim?
And
I think that just means that I'm going to need to come back and do a
I'm okay with that.
deep dive into my story.
I mean, okay, we can do that.
I'm ready for a deep dive.
So that was,
one of the coolest part of my journey. Part of my journey has took me to New York City to be on Oprah, and one of the people who I met at that taping was Dr. Rachel, and I'm so super excited that she is here. She is here.
Great transition, Lee. Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
I know.
Listen, he's an attorney. He knows how to tell a story. Work her own,
We love
Hello,
it.
Dr. Rachel. We're so glad to have you.
Hello, I'm so thrilled to be here. And yes, Lee, thanks to Lee, I'm here because I met you on that show and we spoke about your food noise. And so love the connection, and thank you for making this connection to allow me to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. I'm sorry for the dog barking. We're having all the technical issues in the land on my side today, which is literally the first time this has happened.
That's okay, because before, as I was in the back room, I think that's what you called it, backstage. I'm in New York City and there was lots of noise. So just know I'm in New York City, and if there's noise, that is totally normal for New York City, but it could be annoying for a podcast.
Nah, we'll be all right. Look, we have an editor now, so it's good news.
True. Yes.
Well, obviously we know you because you've been on Oprah, and we've also looked into you, but we would love if you could tell our audience who you are and how you help people.
Sure, I would love to. So, I am Dr. Rachel Goldman, for anybody that doesn't know me. I'm a clinical psychologist based in New York City. I'm also clinical assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the NYU Grossman School of Medicine. And I'm also a mom and lots of other things. But I work in the field of treating obesity, as well as helping individuals make behavior changes to live happier, healthier lives. And that could be related to stress management, body image, obesity, disordered eating behaviors, and other things. Prior to starting my private practice, which it's been years now that I've been in private practice, but prior to then, I also was the senior psychologist at the Bellevue Center for Obesity and Weight Management here in New York City at Bellevue Hospital, which is affiliated with NYU. So I have lots of experience working with individuals struggling with their weight and their health. So, and then I can talk about anything else about that and how I got to the journey or where I got to be where I am today.
How did you decide this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, you know? It's such a story, but I'm going to try to do the Cliff Notes version. So I grew up being a dancer as a hobby. I danced since I was 2.5. I loved it. I then became a runner in high school, and I decided that I wanted to go to school for college, not to be a dancer, but something related to dance. I knew it wasn't going to be my career, but I wanted it to be somehow involved. So I went to college my freshman year for something called dance science. It was being like a physical therapist for dancers, pretty much. So I majored in pre-med and dance at a small liberal arts college in Maryland for dance. I grew up in a very small town in Maryland, and as much as I danced and competed and taught dance, I wasn't exposed to the eating disorder world at all. Like my dance teacher was not, like we didn't talk about weight, body shape, like that just was not known in my little small town. But then I go off to college and I witness a lot of disordered eating behaviors from the other dancers in the community, from the teachers, the comments, things like that. And my very curious mind decided that it wanted to be more curious and understand the why and what is going on in terms of human behavior and eating disorders. So I quickly decided dance is not for me anymore, but I want to understand the why, and I turned to psychology. So I actually transferred colleges to a large college that had was a large university that had a very good psychology department. And then in essence, double majored in health education and nutrition to kind of combine my two interests and learn about how people can become healthier from nutrition and moving their bodies, but also understanding the mind and the mind-body connection. Fast forward a few years, I was doing research in disordered eating behaviors and eating disorders, and quickly realized, although eating disorders is a real thing, I don't want to minimize it at all, it's a very hard population to work with. And I also felt that more people that I could be more helpful by helping individuals struggling with their weight in more of a wanting to lose weight, be healthier on the other kind of end of the spectrum, and decided to shift my focus to obesity and really just to help the average person lose weight and be healthy. So then I started doing research in obesity. I went on to grad school, my internship specializing in the treatment of obesity. I wanted to go to where the best psychologists were that I could learn from. And I somehow got in an office one day and was like, somebody said to me, "You're doing a bariatric surgery evaluation." And I was like, "I'm doing a what?" And I quickly learned about bariatric surgery and everything that goes around that. And I was hooked. And I just loved working with individuals that were struggling and helping them make changes, because I quickly saw that people wanted help and they just didn't know what to do, or they were struggling and didn't have somebody to listen and actually hear them. And I just it all kind of snowballed from there, I'll say. So I know it's a long story, but that's the story.
No, not at all. No, this is wonderful. Yeah. So a little backstory about me. I had bariatric surgery. I had lap band surgery in 2007, and it helped me lose a good bit of weight. And then I had a couple miscarriages, and then I was able to have my son. Eventually, after my son, gained it all back. And I for sure have had an eating disorder since I was 8. And it's like, understanding the pieces of science with this, the amount of like healing that has brought me, of forgiving myself, of recognizing that this mind body connection, there's a thing there, and it wasn't just me. It wasn't just this moral failing. It wasn't, I couldn't control my food. I couldn't do it. I really couldn't, even with the lap band, even with the surgery. And not one time, even with surgery, did anybody ever say to me, did you know that you have a chronic disease and that there's this connection and anything like that? And it wasn't until I took these medications and went without food noise, like what Lee has described in his story, that I was like, oh my God. And the one thing I feel like I've learned, and it I think goes into things you're saying about understanding this world, is there is no such thing as an obese person that is fat and lazy. That is not real. That does not exist. And it's actually episode 5 of our podcast where we had a bariatric surgeon on. And he said to me, like, you didn't have the tools, Kim. Like, you didn't have the tools, because I literally couldn't even, it didn't matter about my professional accolades or my amazing friendships and all this very rich, full life I had, because I couldn't control my food. And that can break a human, and it's sometimes hard to come back from. So we're trying with these conversations to move in a direction, especially for those even who have had bariatric surgery and have regained their weight. We want them to understand, like, there are these other treatments. It's not only that, So thank you so much for telling us like how you came about it. Cause I always wonder. And like, especially when I meet like endocrinologists, I'm like, why did you, bariatric, or obesity specialist, why did you want to do this? So I really appreciate you kind of explaining that backstory to us. And like, Jernine, I think I explained to you before, like she's struggled with obesity later in life. Right. And then Kat hasn't had surgery, but Kat also struggled with obesity the majority of her life and eating disorders. And, I think we all have like different perspectives to share. So thank you for sharing yours. We appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you for listening.
Sorry, Kat, I know you've had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, that's really fascinating that you said that you were in dance first and then you were exposed to the disordered eating. I'm a cycle bar junkie over here in East Cobb, Georgia. I love my spin classes. And one of our trainers was a dancer, and she told us a few stories, but yeah, there was one instance where she mentioned, I think either a coach or an instructor told her to have 1 Fiber One bar a day, and that was it.
So it's scary. I think that my first day at that college, actually, it was like a dance intensive, and I'm not joking when I tell you the lunch was lettuce and Diet Sprite. And I remember going back to my dorm room and calling my mom and being like, what the F is going on here? Like, this is not food. This is not going to satisfy me. And this is not going to give me energy. And it amazed me to like hear the stories from individuals that were really struggling. I feel very fortunate that I haven't struggled with an eating disorder. But I witnessed it. And that's when I was like, wow, like what is going on here? And I want to also clarify, I hope it wasn't confusing or misrepresented earlier when I mentioned eating disorders. I want to just say that, somebody struggling with an eating disorder can be any shape and size. I don't want to, I don't want it to sound like only individuals in smaller bodies have eating disorders. But yeah, so I just realized that I wanted to help the average person, because honestly, the average person is struggling with their weight. We all struggle with our weight at one point or another. And that's what I really wanted to do. And I wanted to make a difference. And that's why I love what you all are doing. That's why I loved the Oprah segment, because really, I think getting the message across is the first step, right? Acknowledging that obesity is a disease and there's tools available. That's the first step.
Yes. Yeah. I really appreciate your empathy, your presence, like everything. And after seeing you on Oprah, I was like, I'm going to say it a lot on this podcast, in this episode, is the empathy. A lot of us in these bodies, sometimes we don't get that from our practitioners. And so it's hopeful. So we definitely appreciate you. But I do have some questions for you. What are some of the traumas from obesity that can manifest in adulthood? And this could be like any sort of like mental, or maybe even in professional, or any sort of issues that may manifest from obesity from childhood into adulthood.
Yeah. So, I mean, really anything, right? If we really think about it, everybody's story is unique, of course, but things that I often hear, and if anybody's heard me speak before or certain posts that I share, I talk a lot about the language that we use, right? Or the language that we hear. So words matter. And I think something that and actually even a client earlier today, we had this discussion that the messages that she received from as a child, from others in her life, impacted her so much that now she still carries this, label of, you're fat, say, because she heard it so many times, right? Or should you be eating that? Things like that. So I think for one thing, a lot that people struggle, and this once again is anybody that struggles with their weight, is that for anybody really, we internalize what we hear. We internalize messages, and we are all listening and seeing messages thrown at us every day from everywhere, right? From family, from friends, from media, from social media, wherever we are. And our brain doesn't know how to interpret all of that. So it kind of does the best it can to interpret it. And then we internalize it. So I think one of the things that I often hear about and see is the emotional aspect of the words that are then carried into adulthood. And it doesn't define us, but it impacts who we are, right? It impacts our self-worth. It impacts our self-esteem, our body image, our mental health, our mental wellness. And I think that is something that's really common that actually isn't talked enough about, just in terms of those words and the language that others are speaking to us as a child now is carried. And that's what we hear all the time now when you do certain things, when you hear certain things. And it takes work to tweak that, but it's not impossible, right?
So it did feel impossible. I feel like
it does. It's hard.
Until I got on medicine. And then it put me in a place to be able to receive. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes sense. I actually got asked that question in the past, because I specialize in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a type of therapy that talks about the relationship of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors and how they're all linked. And I often get asked, if somebody is not capable of doing cognitive behavioral therapy, because there's a cognitive piece that is, maybe a higher functioning type of person or somebody that's, at a certain point in their life may or may not be able to do, like it's difficult to do with children, for instance, because the cognitive part isn't there. If somebody is not capable of doing that, somebody had asked me, do you think the GLP-1s would allow somebody to then be able to do that work? And you just said it, right? That I think some people, what's that?
It does. I see what you mean. Like it does turn that switch off. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's similar to other medications. Like if we think of somebody that struggles with depression, right? Like somebody that is so clinically depressed that they can't think and challenge their own thoughts because they're in a different mental state, or they can't just go out for a walk and do that behavioral part. Sometimes a medication is needed to then make it a little easier, right? To then allow them to do the work. And I think that's what we need to think about with the GLP-1s also, is it falls in the same category, right? I often say I chose to be a psychologist and not a psychiatrist for a reason, but it doesn't mean I don't believe in medication. Right? Sometimes you need the medication first and then the therapy can follow, but all these options are out there. Just like the different treatments for obesity, the different tools, they're all available. Sometimes a combination of them actually work the best, as we know. But same thing goes with other mental illnesses. Like I said, depression, many times, like the treatment of choice, the best evidence-based treatment is a combination of medication and therapy.
For sure. It's safe to say, that was the second part of my question, was to pair or partner up bariatric or GLP-1 therapy with mental health, with cognitive behavioral therapy. It's the whole spectrum, right?
Speaking of spectrum, my son is on the spectrum, and we do cognitive behavioral for him. And it's interesting when you were describing like the difference between children. My son and my husband both are, and it is they do have to get. I find like as he becomes more mature, he gets in a better place to be like, maybe, And it's a very special skill set to help people go, to like sit back and like look at things from like a different lens, and then figure out, okay, now that I know this and I've made these connections that I couldn't make before. Like I remember when I didn't have food noise and I went to drive to get a special treat for myself on my mommy day out, getting my hair done. And I was like, oh, looking for my treat. And then I would go, oh, I want a hot dog. Oh, I want a boba tea, whatever it would be. Right. And I remember the moment that like emotional relationship is like severed like a cord, you know? And I remember going, what am I going to do now? Like, what am I going to do? And then I was like, wait a minute, maybe I don't have to do anything. But I couldn't think like that before. I could never go, do I really want that? No, I really don't. It did not exist for me, but now I can. So like being able to do that mental work and those like better habits. And like, I don't even like to call the things that we did before, just because of what I've like been able to realize on this medicine and through therapy, right? Is that like, I don't even like to call those bad habits. To me, those are just sick people. Like I was a sick me doing what I could do to get by, you know? And that's what I thought that I needed. And now I'm in a place where I don't have to do that anymore. And so, of course, when you get into a place like that and you've never been able to, and you're, 43 years old, you just want to scream it from the rooftops. And luckily there's a whole bunch of other people that wanted to do that too. And they're here with us today. So, but yeah, it's very cool. I love that whole skill set. And I think cognitive behavioral therapy is wonderful for anybody at any age.
And I love the way that you described food noise. And Lee, I know I said the same thing to you on the Oprah segment, that I loved the way you described it too. Because since and I'm very honest and transparent about it, since I haven't struggled with obesity, I haven't had that. But I love hearing how it's manifested in different people. Yeah. And because what you just said is so true. And I just had this call earlier today saying that, from what I understand, when people don't have this food noise anymore, it's like, well, now what do I do with my time? I don't have this heaviness. I don't have this extra mental weight on me constantly thinking about what's next. What am I going to eat? Where am I going to find the hot dog? All these things. Yeah. And it's amazing what you can do with that extra found time or that space that now allows you to be like, I don't need the hot dog, but if I want it, I can have it. And that's okay. Yeah. And I think that's the difference. The food noise becomes this impulsive thing. I need it now. I feel out of control. Yeah. Loss of control. And then it's like, oh, if I want it, but that's different.
That's different. And being able to gear shift, right? Exactly. That gear shift did not work for me. Exactly. But that's what the normies are like. That's what they are. They can gear shift. Normies. That's why when you would try to explain to the normies what this is all like, they're like, couldn't always do that.
I didn't realize at first when you said normies, I was like, the what? But normies.
I get it. 60% of America.
So for my community that might be listening, the normies, I'm going to say, I'm pretty sure you're referring to the individuals who the calories in, calories out works. Yeah. It works for them. Doesn't work for others.
Yes.
Got it. I like that.
Exactly.
They don't have metabolic disorders. That's the normies.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I like this idea. I like this idea of it allowing you to address other things, because for me, getting rid of the food noise has just been step one. It hasn't led to super dramatic weight loss over the last 6-7 months, but it allows me now to realize, okay, that part's gone. There's other things that are driving my weight other than just food noise. For some people, maybe it is just the food noise, and that's amazing. They'll lose weight super fast. Sure. For me, that's one element, but I think there's stress is a huge thing for me. And I think getting rid of that food noise, now it's like, okay, that's being addressed. Now I need to deal with how I manage stress, because I think that's a factor for why I haven't lost weight as quickly. But now, it's one less thing that I can, but that's where the combination comes in. So I really like the way that you are putting that, Dr. Rachel.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned managing stress, because I talk to all of my clients about stress management and having a unique coping toolbox that works for them of coping tools. Because if we are not managing our stress, so many problems can arise. And many people, I'm not generalizing, but many people do turn to food when they're stressed. And after somebody has bariatric surgery or maybe is on a GLP-1, it's not that food is taken away, but you may not want to be turning to food anymore, or you don't have the desire to turn to certain foods anymore. And then the question is, what do you do? Right? So that is something I love to talk to patients about before they start GLP-1s or before they start bariatric or go for bariatric surgery, because it's really important to be building that coping toolbox in advance. So then it's not just taken away and you're like, oh my God, I'm stressing now. What do I do? Because I used to turn to food.
Mhm.
So that's really important. And I think that's why it's so important that anybody seeking treatment for obesity, regardless of which tool they're going to use, that they have that mental health support and they have that other support in place, because these are things that have to be addressed.
And like, I do think that's something to consider. And what I've realized through this process is that not everybody can afford a therapist. Not everybody can afford these medications for sure. And not everybody can afford a therapist or is going to go and feel like they're in a safe place to go somewhere, and where a lot of people feel like they're being judged. Now, therapy is something I've been doing a long time with my husband and with my son, because it's just such a big part of our lives. But it wasn't always like that for me. I for sure grew up in a household where that wasn't what we did. We didn't even talk about things, you know? So I think it's important to understand the power of community if you don't have access to that, right? So in our community on TikTok, we know each other, we support each other. We have our friends that maybe just comment, and then we have our friends that maybe want to help moderate on lives, and we have our friends who actually want to post and share their story. And they're all different size of different creators that we do this. And I will tell you, I know the medication is magical and powerful and all the things, but what has made the difference for me, 14 months and the longest I've ever gone, you know, and not even had, I'm fine. Like, I'm great. It's because of my community. The power of hearing other people and just like knowing that it's not your fault. It's huge. And every day I can go there and see that. And I do therapy too, which is great, but I'm blessed, right? I'm privileged that I can afford to do therapy. So I hope that like people who are out there who don't know, like, there's still a space for you, you know, and we share stuff, and we have Dr. Rachel and other people like this on the show. So I hope like, you'll at least enjoy this. You can't get that.
Absolutely. That support and knowing that you're not alone is so important. And as much as I'm an expert in this area and a therapist, I tell people all the time, you have to make connections with other people going through similar things. Even if you are quiet and you just listen, you hear another story, something's going to hit you and be like, oh, I'm not alone. That wasn't just me. That happens to them too. Or something sounds similar. And there's lots of support groups and forums. And I really do encourage everybody to be a part of a community and feel that support, because it's needed, really.
So important.
That's the nature of binge eating. I have gone to many therapists for my binge eating and overeating, Overeaters Anonymous, but that's the nature of binging, is isolating.
Yes.
And pulling away. And I did that a lot of shrinking, a lot of
no more
shrinking around. No more shrinking. What Kim says, no more shrinking. But it's so isolating.
It is. It's a lot of being alone, because it's a lot of shame and it's a lot of trauma.
That's it. It's this big shame, the big shame.
And we all see that within each other, and it all manifests within our community too. And there's always some sort of drama, but we always all work through it as well. We get through it. You know, and that's something Dr. Rudy was on our show. And I don't know who Dr. Rudy is, but he was on our show, and I was like kind of talking about sort of this pain and trauma, and like forgiveness of self and forgiveness of doctors and forgiveness of, and trying to forgive and move forward and heal, right? And trying to heal. I'm trying, Kat, and to know what's great though about people with obesity is they have grit. They have so much grit. And that's what we do, right? We get down and we just kind of pull ourselves back up, and being around that power, all those people that think that way and that do that and just keep pulling themselves back up. I'm telling you, we could change the world. We could do it.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And it's contagious, right? You see somebody else being motivated and making change, and you want to jump in and do it. And it's about sharing those stories and holding each other's hands and being that ear, that shoulder to lean on when somebody needs it. And that's what the community is all about. And I think those are the individuals that are the most successful, or the ones that have that added support in that community.
Yeah, I agree. I think you need an anchor. And I think if you can't do a therapist, please do both if you can. But you can't.
This work.
We're here.
Do this
first. It's a good step in, right? It's a good
You're making me. I'm like brainstorming. I'm like, how can we do like a Dr. Rachel / all of you like support group? Like, I don't know. I'm like, we got to think about something.
There's so much disparity, like with these medications and with the disease, and we just want more people. We want more access, more affordable access, all kinds of care.
And that's it's a good point, Kim, about the access and the disparity, because very few people have this covered. This
Yes.
treatment or counseling, psychiatry.
Even
You know,
yeah.
but out here in Washington State, and I don't know if Dr. Rachel, you've seen this. There's a couple lawsuits going, class actions, to try and force the insurance companies to cover these, and calling it discrimination. And you were talking about language earlier, and it made me think about the words that we use when we're talking about this, because the lawsuits out here are couching obesity in terms of a disability. We're all on the same page that this is a disease. Yeah. But I wonder about the use of that word. And I'm curious, because that's how the attorneys who are doing this lawsuit are saying it's disability discrimination to not cover treatment for obesity. And I think calling obesity a disability is a bit different than saying it's a disease.
Well,
and I don't know if we should be using that word.
Autism, Lily. Like, that's that. If you think about it, like with autism, we consider that a disability. Like, in order to get the rights that they need to have a service dog, or to get, things that they need to be able to support them, right? They have to be considered as a disability. But we also know that autism is not a disability, really, right? Like, it's just their brain work. That's neurodivergence. Their brain just works different. There's nothing wrong with them. But we have to label them as such just so they can get support, because that's how our society looks at things. So I kind of don't care if they want to call me disabled. If that's the case, like if it's that I can get care and get better, then like I am okay with that, But I think
I just wonder, though. Yeah. I just wonder if somebody would internalize that then and feel, right. Because I agree with you, like in a way, like if it makes people get the care, who cares? But I don't love it. And if I think about it, if we break it down, the way that I see disability with obesity is that obesity obviously is a disease. We know that. Mm-hmm. But some individuals with obesity may have additional symptoms or may have disabilities that are associated with the disease, right? Mm-hmm. So, but obesity is not a disability, but I'm seeing individuals with obesity may also be disabled or have other disabilities. Mm.
Yeah.
That's how I'm imagining it, right? Like if somebody's say somebody has obesity and they have difficulties walking, right? That could be somewhat more of a disability. But the actual, like if we label everybody with obesity having a disability, I think that's too far.
I mean, I for sure think people internalize autism that way too. They for sure feel like the world is not made for them, because it's not,
Right.
Well,
yeah.
It's a lot. It's heavy.
But that's interestingly. I think we can.
Yeah, no, I think it's what how you're phrasing it is good. That you can have obesity and then have things that the obesity causes, which are disabling.
Exactly.
But saying, like, if somebody's got a BMI of just into the obesity stage 1 level, are we going to say they're disabled just because of that one feature? That seems, but that's kind of how the lawsuit's going. For me, it seems like there shouldn't be discrimination, regardless of whether you're going to call it a disease. If you're discriminating against somebody or a disability, if you're going to discriminate against somebody because they have a disease, that seems just as bad. So why not just call it disease discrimination? Right. But that's where when you said the language thing, I was thinking about how would people potentially internalize or hear that if they thought, oh, now I'm disabled because I'm obese. That's not necessarily a good thing.
And we have to remember, not everybody with obesity is as motivated as all of you on this call or on this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. So some individuals have depression and have depressive symptoms, and they are perhaps hearing somebody say, or some, like maybe they have a really low mood, they can't get out of bed, like, and then they're hearing somebody say, oh, and you're disabled.
Yeah.
Right. How's that going to make them feel? That's what I'm imagining. For you, maybe you're like, you know what? I don't care what you want to label me. I'm going to get my medication and I'm going to feel good.
But we take the medication, right? Like people who don't have that realization.
But it's a label. And now it's another label that they already have on top of the list of all the other labels everyone's been calling them their whole life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's how I'm seeing it. Not helpful.
It does make sense.
I appreciate that.
I know I get it. I mean, if I wasn't on this medication, I think I'd feel like that. You know what I mean? I do. I feel like I would for sure feel like, and I had depression and anxiety as well, but it's because I'm on it, right? Like that's why I'm cognitively in a place that I can shift,
Exactly. Right.
That's awesome. Can we ask one more question?
Yes. And I was saying too, we can do more of these episodes and continue because I think we all could talk forever.
Sure.
Because we really want to touch on The Whale, because I saw The Whale.
Yeah.
That's a powerful movie. We want to appreciate. I appreciate your work on the film. I watched it on the way to a vacation, and I tell everybody, definitely watch it when you are in a very upbeat place because it's serious. But I really felt better after, I felt better watching it. I felt seen. So the main character, of course, Charlie, he develops BED and obesity and isolates from a traumatic episode. My question is, does that, I guess that neuroses, or does that switch kind of exist in you that you already like have you have more propensity to have BED, or would it be a traumatic event that would trigger? And if so, is there a difference? Are you born with it, or is it just one event that triggers, or can it just be whatever happens, whatever person to person?
Yeah, so great question. And for anybody listening that doesn't know what BED is, it's binge eating disorder. And something that I like to remind people is that eating disorders, just like obesity, are multifactorial, right? There's many factors that can contribute to them, and it's not just one thing. But we do know that people with a family history of eating disorders are at higher risk of developing an eating disorder. It may not be binge eating disorder to binge eating disorder, although we do see that, but they are more likely to develop an eating disorder. But, and I want to add to that because actually it was in 2016, I took a note on this, so I remember the year. In 2016, actually, a specific gene was actually also identified, which associated a specific gene mutation that is inherited from parents for binge eating disorder. So there is a genetic factor for sure. But there's a famous quote that I started my dissertation on. The first sentence of my dissertation is, and it's a quote about, it can actually be related to a lot of things, but I think it is so relevant to eating disorders and obesity. It's like, mic drop. Genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. So is it genes? Is it environment? Is it social factors? Is it behavioral factors? It is all of it. But I think there's individuals, and this goes for a lot of things. Like I said, it's not just obesity, not just eating disorders. It could be depression also, right? So it could go for many things. Somebody may be predisposed genetically, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to develop it. Certain environments then could cause it to be, more developed or an individual to have it. So it really depends. I also think, like we were talking about emotional eating before, we didn't necessarily label it at that, but we were talking about emotional eating before. And I think also for people who are more prone to participate in emotional eating and then go through a very traumatic experience, if their go-to is is food, like Charlie's in this case, he had a very traumatic experience. We don't know what his life looked like, previously, but he had a very traumatic experience and he was turning to food out of an emotion. Out of an emotion to comfort him, to fill that void. But I don't want to say that all individuals with trauma are going to develop an eating disorder. It really depends on multiple factors, including your support system and your coping mechanisms.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And that's why we see it all different. Yeah. It for sure runs rampant in my family. So it's just and there's so much emotional eating. And it is very, very strange. It's very common, especially at the holidays, which is about the time this episode's going to come. And then it feels so weird thing,
People don't realize that holidays are hard for people.
They are.
You know, like everyone thinks holidays are this joyous time, but holidays are tough. You know, this, like, actually starting a few weeks ago, I started talking to every client of mine about, let's talk about the holidays. How's it going to be for you? Let's have a plan in place. So many of my clients go home and they have to experience shaming.
Yeah.
You know, are you going to eat that? Oh, you gained weight. Oh, should you eat that? You know, all of these things. And holidays bring up all of that and a lot of other things for people, and they can be tough.
It's so true. Whether you're on this medicine and you're trying not to eat or what, I remember like at the holidays last year, because I had just been on the medicine for, several months at that point. But I remember like people being offended, almost looking offended or hurt that I didn't eat enough of their dish. Right.
Yes.
Like that's even an emotion, right? Like, oh, it must not have been good enough, but it's really just because I just didn't want it. I don't binge anything anymore. I don't even binge Netflix anymore. So in general, like I eat a little bit and then I'm done. Like I eat for fuel, but it's such a gear shift. And especially if someone else they don't have the tool and you do, then that gets weird. Like it's not easy. It is not as joyous, especially when you deal with obesity. It really isn't.
It's true. There's so much to navigate. And I think that's why it's important, once again, to bring it back to community, why it's so important to have a community and a safe space, even to talk through like some sample scripts. Like I do this with my clients, like let's have a script ready to go. When somebody asks you about XYZ, this is what you're going to say. Or if maybe you just started the GLP-1s and you have less of an appetite and maybe you don't want to share with everybody yet what you're doing, or it's your choice not to if you don't want to. But what are you going to say when somebody shoves another plate in your face saying you didn't eat enough of my dish? To have something ready to go, because then that's what causes more overwhelming feelings and more anxiety when we're caught off guard and we don't know what to say. So having sample scripts can be so helpful for these situations.
I love that so much. I love that. We're going to make that a short. People need to see that in our community. I never even thought about that way. And I used to struggle with crippling anxiety. I think that many people, not anymore, but I used to, I think many people would love that. Like, how do I manage that anxiety before I go into that moment so I can be in the moment and enjoy it? I love it.
Yeah.
Cognitive behavioral
therapy. I was just going to say, it's anticipating difficult situations and coming up with a plan for it in advance.
Love it.
Even if you don't have to use it, the plan is there. It automatically decreases some of the anxiety and takes us some of that, eases it a little.
Wow. That will definitely help our community. We will make sure that it gets out there sooner rather than later.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I know that you're tight on time. Of course, we could talk to you forever, and we would love to do a part 2 if you're open.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for being here, and go take care of that baby.
Thank you.
I'm sure you're exhausted.
Yes,
thank
you. And thank you so much for having me. And I mean it when I say let's do part 2, 3, 4, etc. Yes. I love this topic. I love talking about it, and I love all of you. So let's just make it happen.
I would love
Thank
that.
you.
Your awesome self, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, that was lovely. Hey, Lee, I'm so glad you're still here.
I'm still here.
Well, that was an awesome episode.
Yes.
I think it's really cool to get her to come back. Like all of those, like the things she said right at the end, like that special, like cognitive behavioral skill, right? Like that piece of, hey, if you have anxiety about the holidays, right, do this and it will make you feel better and more in control and prepared. And then it will reduce your anxiety. Like, I think things like that would be huge for our community that kind of, like there's all those reasons, like they can't afford therapy and they, and they need us. Like, we all need each other, So I'm excited to have her come back. She was just as fabulous as I thought she would be. Lee, thank you so much for making this connection for us.
Thank you, Lee.
And you'll have to come back on too. And next time you're going to tell your whole story.
Yeah. I did the group panel and then I did this one, but I didn't know if she would even respond, but she started following me back on socials, and I just messaged her and was like, "Hey, there's this podcast. It's amazing. You should be on it." And she jumped right on. Yeah. She was great. So I think she's genuinely eager to be a part of it.
Me too. Yeah, she's like, "How can we help?" I'm like, "I don't know. How can
I love her so much. Her energy, and just like I was saying all the time on this episode, her
origin story, like this is so interesting.
Yeah,
right?
that was
cool. And like the whole other like side of the coin, so interesting. What a great find, great guest.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
Yes, Thank you so much, Lee. We'll have you back on when we have Dr. Rachel on, and you have to tell your whole story. That's the thing.
Okay, I got a whole story I can tell.
I know, and you didn't really get to tell it on the Oprah episode, or really, I mean, you got kind of like you keep getting all the pithy media people. That's not who we are here.
I know, long form. This is long
form, baby, long form. Yeah.
Talk.
All right.
Long form, babe.
Long form, babe. Okay, cool. All right. I will text you and we'll set it up once I hear back from her. I'm so excited.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Bye, Lee. Yay. That was good.
Oh, gosh.
That was
like so intense. We have so many questions we didn't get to. Let's do NSVs and we'll wrap up.
My NSV, I rode 100 miles 2 days ago.
Hell yeah, you did. Hell yeah.
You know, I want to touch on it on our plus sides later on, but it's so different when you're not stuck in diet culture and you're trying to lose weight and you're doing it to reduce your fat or whatever, because when you have to do something that's going to cause amounts, you need all your endurance.
Yeah.
You don't starve yourself. You have to keep consuming sugar throughout and you have to feed yourself. What? For the first time, an endurance event, I did not feel like I was going to die.
Yeah.
wow.
F that diet culture.
Hey,
And don't train for an endurance sport to lose weight, because that's just, well, you're not going to. You need, anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Get off my soapbox.
Barry, I like it.
No.
To run for 5 hours.
I never walked any further than a mile. Well, that's not true. I walked all over New York, and that was definitely a lot. So no, that's not true. I have. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
In parts, sure, I have, but not like that endurance and like consistent and not stopping.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. I can't even imagine. Awesome. Such a badass. We love you.
Beyond.
What about you, JT? You got anything?
Beyond.
Because I know like you got a lot. You're gonna have a lot of NSVs now because you're a maintenance boo.
Yeah. I was interviewed by Bloomberg.
That's right. Tell us all about it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, you don't have to. I guess.
But it'll be coming out, I believe, this week or next week. So I'm somewhat bracing myself because I don't know all how it's going to be framed, but being able to share my story, and it's not just my story, but I talked about the community and all of the wonderful people in it, because one thing I've learned through all of this is that it's about you, but it's really about the community. Yeah. And I guess that would be my NSV. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's way more than I think, growing and healing, right? Than just shrinking. Right. I have such a deep love of our community. And I will say though, I sometimes I can't sleep. It is hard. Yeah, it is hard because I see these things, and because it's community driven and people send me things, and the desperation that I come across, it just makes me want to work harder and do more. And I need to realize like I still have a family and a life and my own journey that I also have to be able to balance. And that's very, very hard to do for me. So I need to do a little cognitive behavioral therapy to figure out a way out through that for sure. I'm getting there though. I'm starting to think like, okay, how can I manage the stress better? Because there's no way I can manage the passion better. Do you know what I mean? Like I am what I am. It's how I am. But how can I manage the stress better? And I think it's all right, like being able to have more volunteers to help in more areas, right? But it's also important to me that volunteers, have an opportunity to whatever it is they're working on, they feel good about, or that they could leverage in a different capacity, like creating a portfolio for social or something like that. Like I want people to be able to do different things. And this is just good experience for that, and I think about all those things. It's a very big responsibility. It really is. I did not realize what it was going to be like until it was here, but it is the honor of my life to be able to do this. Outside of having my kid, it's the best thing I've ever done. It's my favorite thing, Joy. So I think NSV for me was when I went to the hospital, everything's fine. But when I went to the hospital, I wore a normal sized hospital gown, and they used a normal sized blood pressure cuff and an electric one and it took my blood pressure great, and my blood pressure was great.
Mhm.
Like, and so that was, I don't know why that was such a big deal, but I know like anytime I've ever had to go to the hospital for anything, like whether I was pregnant or whatever it was, I always had so much, just like a doctor, like she was just talking about, Dr. Rachel, anxiety about that moment. Like, or if I was going to go to anywhere, like you go to business, right? Or you go to some sort of work event and you walk in and you see all these chairs and you're like, there's no way the weight capacity for that is my weight capacity. Like there's no way those things match. And then you worry about them and there's anxiety about that. And that's how I was with everything. Hospital gown, blood pressure cuff. Like anytime I go to the doctor, just
Home
think about all the
exercise
anxiety.
equipment.
Yeah, exercise equipment. Yeah,
Home
it's
exercise equipment.
fast,
Usually
right?
it's like the capacity is 200 pounds. Like
Yeah,
at one
no,
point I'm like, I'm 315, I'm 320. What are we doing here?
yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it's awful. And a lot of companies, I think, have started to realize a bare minimum needs some chairs for people of size, but just things like that. I think it's so much. And what she was talking about disabilities and stuff, like there's so much anxiety around all things because this world is not built for fat people. It's not built for autistic people. It's just not, and I almost feel like that's where the disability lies, right? In my opinion, but that's just me. That's just me.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been a great episode. We will definitely have a part 2 with Dr. Rachel. So
I
make
can't
sure
wait.
you
Oh, yeah.
subscribe because it's free and you will know when we have it coming up, Awesome. All right, everybody. We will see you next week. Have a good one. You are not alone. It's not your fault. Night.
Hasta la pasta.
It's